this hour of the Sports Bash, live from the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort. It's brought to you by Jersey Cal, with 2 locations that are open every day from noon to 10 p.m. in Northfield and Brigantine. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cal. And right now, joining us to talk a little bit about the game yesterday, it was a win, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. It is a win. We asked the people on the X platform at Mike Gill Show, do you feel good about the win? Are you surprised that it's about a 50-50 split, that people feel good and others are saying, no, I don't feel good even though they won the game?
I'm not surprised. In fact, well, maybe I am surprised, Mike, that it's 50-50 and not 80-20 of people not feeling good about it being a win.
Yeah, you got a lot of people who obviously not happy with the decisions that happened. So let's start there. Nick just talked about an hour ago, and he said, I make the decisions to put us in the best chance to win. The best for us in that case. Do you look at those decisions yesterday and have a problem with them, or do you say, listen, he trusts his players, that's who he is, and if that's who he is, I'm okay with it?
No, I mean, I have an issue with it because I think he did the opposite of what he said a coach is supposed to do, which is put players in the best position to succeed. You're down a right tackle. You're down a right guard. You're not scoring points. You're down 3-0. You're going into the half, and you have the opportunity to feel good, right, picking up a field goal and making it 3-3. And, you know, you run a play instead where it's not even your sort of bread and butter tush push. So you didn't even feel like running your bread and butter play against that defense. You wanted to modify it and maybe catch them by surprise, which is probably the first indication, right, that maybe you shouldn't do. Maybe you should have just put the points on the board. If that was what
I
you were
brought
thinking.
I brought up earlier, Moshe. I want to see what you think. Like, that's what I think he was trying to do. I think he thought they could score a touchdown by catching them by surprise. Because going for the tush push, getting the first down, okay, I got a first down. I only got 14 seconds left. I call timeout. Then what am I going to do? I think he thinks he was going to score by catching them off guard on that play.
Well, then we go into all of the variables of a decision, right? Why do you think you're going to score? Why do you think that play is going to be successful when Grant Calcaterra is being asked to make a big block on the edges when he's not a good blocker, right? What is the percentage in your mind of you executing that play flawlessly to score versus not executing that play versus taking the points there? So that's why I try not to, I do believe analytics are important. I think they tell a story. I think the game is controlled by it in many, many ways. But it doesn't take into context the situations all the time. Your personnel, again, you're down right guard, down right tackle. You're asking a third-string flex tight end to make a block on that play that you probably would want your wide tight end to make, or a person who's capable of doing a better block there. So then you just get into, well, why did you think that play was going to score a touchdown against a good defense?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the element of surprise is it, right? You're thinking, and you just laid out a lot of great points of why it didn't make sense. But I think he's saying they think we're trying to get 1 yard to get the first down. We're going to line up in that manner, and we're going to do something we normally don't do and try to sweep it, and we think Saquon Barkley can hit that edge and score a touchdown. I mean, to me, it's the only thing that makes some sense, because if you get the first down, then what are you doing? What are you calling, timeout? And then what are you going to throw a pass? That could be sack, interception, come up short of the goal line. I mean, to me, that's why the play is unjustifiable unless you think I'm scoring a touchdown on that play.
100%. And I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now.
Yeah,
and
not to mention
I'll go back to this. Like, it's not – I get it. Like, coaches plan – they have ideas for these things. It's not like you just pulled that out of a hat or anything like that. But I just question why in that situation you felt that was putting your players in the best position to succeed. I also get wanting to be aggressive, and we know what happened against Atlanta at times where he was aggressive and wasn't aggressive. But I don't know. I
Well,
just think he showed a real lack of feel for the game right there.
I agree. And there's another reason, Moshe, in your point about the lack of feel for the game. It's 3-0. You're on the road. Your defense is playing great. And you're getting the ball back. Kick the field goal, get the ball back, and take a chance now to get 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's another part of it that I thought, listen, there's a part of it that's like, look, he's showing trust in his players. He has a lot of confidence in his players. Because you can make an argument, and I want your comments on this, Moshe, that New Orleans had a lack of confidence in their players, and that cost them yesterday.
100%. I thought Clint Kubiak was for a coordinator whose offense was averaging 40 points a game. And now I get it. I'm sure even Clint knew that was not sustainable. But I thought in the second half, he was overly conservative, trying to go to the Alvin Kamara well just too many times, even though Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams and the Eagles defensive line had at that point consistently been in the Saints backfield. And, the Saints lost an offensive lineman, one of their center, who was one of their better players. I was surprised that they had a conservative game plan there. So, yeah, both coaches surprised me with their decision-making.
Right. So one of the things, I guess, your takeaway, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're saying the Eagles won this game despite the bad decisions from Nick Sirianni.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, they won the game despite a lot of things, not just Nick Sirianni's decision, but yeah. Yeah. I mean, they won the game because, if we're being honest here, and I'm sure this isn't going to go over well, I know that pick plays are designed to cause traffic and get defensive backs, make it tough for them to cover in man. But you don't often see, especially for good defenses, you don't see two guys just completely run into each other. And then the third guy sort of get caught up in the wash there for
that was unbelievable.
For a play that should have probably been a 10-yard gain that the Saints were willing to give up then, 10 to 12 yards to a 61-yard gain. That's why they won the game. They got lucky. Let's be honest. It's happened. The Eagles beat the Vikings last year because Justin Jefferson throws himself into the end zone and fumbles it. Remember that? He fumbles a sure touchdown in the end zone just because he was leaping into the end zone, and instead of a touchdown, the ball came back, and the Eagles got the ball, and Minnesota didn't get a touchdown, and that's how they wound up winning that one-possession game. Sometimes you get lucky.
All right, so you have the element of Sirianni that we're looking at and saying he made some curious calls. The one before the half, there's another one, and then he goes for the 60-yard field goal. Thoughts on that decision?
I like Jake Elliott as much as anyone, but I thought it was a puzzling third and fourth down sequence. I can't remember exactly what the play call was on third down that set up their fourth down field goal. I thought maybe that they felt that they could have two chances to get the first down. But in that situation, your defense is playing really well. And it's not a fluke, right? Like, your defense is playing really well against a team, again, that was just lighting up the scoreboard. And all that game, you're in the backfield and you're making it difficult, and the coach for the other team is now conservative. And you have a chance to pin them with a punt, right, pretty deep in their own territory. And even if you don't get it, land it inside the 20 or the 10, which I think they could have. But even if you don't, then they still have to go the field, right? They still have to make 3 or 4 plays work to be able to sustain some momentum and the drive to be able to either get a field goal or a touchdown. And instead, you gave him the ball at the middle of the field. That one, it's just perplexing to me. A 60-yard field goal, as good as Jake is, I still think risk-reward, you might as well just try to pin them in and make them go the distance when they haven't been able to do that for the entire game.
Well, and right, because you missed the field goal, Moshe. You give them the ball at the 50, they go 9 plays, 50 yards, and now they score as opposed to making them go the length of the field. You're up 7-6, and you gave them a chance to cut the field in half to take the lead on you. That's why it goes back to, I appreciate that he shows confidence in his players, but it's almost to the detriment sometimes. Like, hey, I trust my kicker. I got the best kicker. That's great. But the game feel said, you're having a little too much trust in him at this moment in time.
100%. I agree. And, I think the sad part is that I feel like if you polled like 80 people, not just fans, I'm saying, coaches or NFL players, they all would have agreed with us. And so what seems so obvious really sort of betrayed him.
Well,
or he betrayed everybody else with those decisions.
It's funny, though. You're seeing around the league. I mean, Atlanta last week wins the game in part because Philadelphia is so aggressive. Well, then Atlanta last night, they don't take the points, and then they don't take the points again. They lose the game by 5 instead of possibly winning that game with the two field goals. They didn't get any points in the 2 possessions there. This seems to be happening more and more.
Well, that's where context is in, right? I can sort of understand the thinking that I'm facing the Chiefs, the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. I need touchdowns, not field goals, right, to beat them. But in this context, you're not looking at the Saints at that point of the game like the team that's scoring 40 points a game. You're looking at a team that can't move the football against you. It is very one-dimensional. So, so take the points at the time that you can. You're not worried about the Saints exploding and scoring 35 points in the second half or anything there.
Well, and then the interesting part is he goes for a 60-yard field goal. The field goal earlier, they're down 3-0. This is the second time they went for it. They're down 3-0. They have a 10-play drive. They basically didn't go anywhere. They could have tried like about a 50-yarder. I think it would have been about a 50, 51-yarder. And instead on 4th and 3, he goes for it. He ends up getting sacked on the play. Is that a spot where you say, you know what, you're down 3-0. You're in a weird spot, 50, 51. Do you kick that field goal, or do you not? Or do you mind him going for it there?
I didn't mind that one. I think at that point, I could be wrong, but I mean, I don't think they're down 2 linemen at that point.
No, I think they are. I think
were they?
Well, no, that was at the that was the third quarter. So Lane Johnson went out, they both went out in the first half. Yeah, I think both guys were out in the first half. Yep, they were both out at that point.
Yeah, I thought you said you were referencing an early second quarter possession.
No. The play out of the half is when they went for it on 4th down and 3, and Hurts ends up getting sacked.
Yes, yeah. At the time I was wrestling with it. I guess in that time I didn't mind the way the game was playing out at the time. It did feel like the first person to actually get the ball into the end zone was the first team to get the ball in the end zone was going to win that game. So understood. I'm not like saying you should take the points every single time. I just think there are certain times where it's more obvious than others. That one to me is a little more of a 50-50.
They get the block punt. They get a punt block, and at that moment, you almost feel like you've been dominating this game, and yet you haven't scored, and now you give him this. Like at that moment, you think the game is kind of almost sealed. You got to give their defense a lot of credit. What changed and stood out to you about why the defense was able to slow them down?
Yeah, so against Atlanta, Mike, and I'm not going to blame New Orleans. You got to do what you do, right? Atlanta played mostly in 11 personnel, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. And that forced Vic Fangio to play nickel defense. And when he plays nickel, it's a 4-man front, not a 5-man front. The Saints are more of a Shanahan-style team that plays the fullback and the tight end or 2 tight ends. So they go heavy up front, and it has Vic counter with a base defense that has a 5-man front, five linemen, 2 linebackers. I think it does help to have extra guys at the line of scrimmage, but there is also no question that Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Milton Williams penetrated into the backfield way better. They did not get taken for a ride horizontally on those wide zones like they did against the Falcons. Why that happened against the Falcons? I feel like we have this conversation once or twice a year, right? Do you remember the Lions game, the season opener, a couple of years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, but they got ran all over, and we would point out double teams that Fletcher Cox wasn't getting off, that Javon Hargrave wasn't getting off. And there are just times, for whatever reason, that the Eagles, and I'm sure other teams have this problem too, they just don't get the job done. And Atlanta's offensive line is very good, by the way, so that factors into it as well. I don't think New Orleans' offensive line is as good, but there is no question that the interior linemen did a way better job of not letting the offensive line dictate the offensive play calling.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. The Eagles, let's put it in perspective. You just talked about their defense. We talked about Sirianni. They went on the road to New Orleans, a tough place to play. They won a game where A.J. Brown was not in the game. They lost Lane Johnson. They lost Mekhi Becton. And then to win the game, They lost Devontae Smith. I mean, when you take away the decisions that everyone wants to look at, which is fair, how impressed are you with the fact that they were able to find a way to win this game?
I mean, mildly, to be honest. I mean, it depends on your. If you're the Raiders, right, and you go and you beat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore and you outscore them and you come back from down 13, it doesn't matter how bad you looked, right? Because the expectations of winning each week are not there the way they are when you're the Eagle. When you're the Eagles, your fans and your team, your management, your coaches, you're expected to look like a Super Bowl contender, and you're expected to execute well and not turn the ball over, on average twice a game. So,
Fair
point. It's hard to get excited. But I will say this. I think winning that game was more important for the long term than the short term, because I do believe the Eagles will eventually get themselves their act together. Things will be good. And when you're in December and you're fighting for either seeding or whatever it is, division wild card, having that win will help you as you're trying to accumulate more wins than your teams you're fighting for. But for the current right now, you have to be really, really disappointed by how this offense. I know A.J. Brown isn't playing, but that's not really an excuse when you still have Barkley, Goedert, and Smith to look that bad offensively.
Has Barkley been a bigger factor than you thought he might have been when they got him?
Yes.
All right. So you like the way they're using him?
I do. And the big runs don't surprise me. I mean, he's had these games with the Giants, right? I mean, they signed him for that reason. He had a 2,000-yard season once. I've been pleasantly surprised by the third and fourth quarter runs where he really needs to pick up some yards. And he may have to drag, against a 7-man box, and you have to either drag a guy or not go down on the first hit. Still happened, it happened Monday night a little bit. And it'll probably, you'll see the feast or famine part of his game more as the season plays out. But I also thought he was really good in certain spots in blitz pickup. I'll have to look more on the tape, but that wasn't a strong point. And I thought he had a few decent ones against the Saints. So,
by the way,
I've been surprised.
Barkley, 351 yards. He leads the league in rushing. He's averaging 117 yards per game, 5.6 yards per carry. Yeah, he's been a big part of it. Let's last thought from Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, and you can get more thoughts from the guys over on the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. What do we think of Hurts' game yesterday? If I just said, look, 29-38 for 311 yards. He then throws the interception in the red zone again, 7 straight games with the pick. He also fumbled the ball. Would you look and say, man, Hurts played really well, or is this another game where you're like, man, these turnovers are just not being fixed?
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad because I really do think that Jalen Hurts did a way better job of staying in the pocket, trusting protection, amazingly with 2 offensive linemen out, and making some throws from within the pocket than bailing. But the 2 turnovers are just, listen, they're inexcusable. And I know the defenders out there, well, Smith ran a bad route. Okay. I mean, it was a well-timed throw. And if Smith had run a better route, it gives you a better chance to make that touchdown. But it's still a cover 2 zone that you're trying to thread a window in, and you gave up points because, you expected too many things to go right on that kind of play. I think Dotson was open on the other side. Either way, if this was just one game where he did that, you could say, all right, Smithy ran a bad route. That's not normal. But the man is turning the ball over twice a game for how many games in a row now? I mean, going back to last year, it's a problem. And people who want to say blame the coaching staff or blame the protection or blame the receivers' routes, you're not. I mean, you got to be real. If this were the Cowboys quarterback, Dak Prescott doing the same thing, Eagles fans would be like, oh, look at that guy. He's an idiot. He's making terrible mistakes. He's a turnover waiting to happen. Well, guess what? Right now, Jalen Hurts is a turnover waiting to happen twice a game, and that's not good.
Goddard.
That fumble was awful, Mike. You know that. That fumble was about as bad as a fumble as you can have.
You could see it coming from a mile away. The guy's chasing from the backside. You saw it coming. You're 100% right. That game, Goddard a bigger part moving forward, or is that just a byproduct of no Brown and then Smith going out and they just needed him?
Yeah, that's a great question. He was having a great game before that catch, obviously. And it definitely appeared to me for example, I saw one play in the first half he made. It was a 21-yard gain on the deep over. You might remember it was his first big catch. And it happened out of 13. There were 3 tight ends on the field. So they were clearly – it was a play action. So it was supposed to look like a run. It did its job. And so that was, to me, Kellen Moore scheming Dallas Goedert to get in a one-on-one situation, to beat his guy, which he did, and to get the ball. So I think it kind of makes you wonder, just like with Vic Fangio, not playing a different front maybe against the Falcons, why did it take a game, right? Why didn't you do that against the Falcons? Or did you do it and you thought you were doing it and you weren't? I don't know, but it certainly was much better against the Saints, and they needed it. And if A.J. Brown is going to be out still, or Devontae is going to be out and A.J. comes back, they will need Dallas Goedert to be schemed well and give him opportunities to get the ball.
10 catches, 170 yards. That 61-yard catch for Dallas Goedert. It's the big play in the game. And, of course, the Eagles win 15-12. You heard it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Britton Covey out. Lane Johnson, that didn't look good. Smith, he could be out. Brown, I would imagine, is out again. This is going to be a tough week. We'll be previewing it and looking at it with the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast. That's Geoff Mosher. He's back Wednesday right here on Football at 4. Thanks, Jeff.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, and it's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.